Germany's AfD is accusing Chancellor Merz of election fraud while simultaneously trying to rebrand itself as moderate and coalition-ready, and when a far-right party classified as extremist by domestic intelligence is claiming voter betrayal because the guy who won didn't close borders he never promised to close, you're watching political opportunism dressed up as democratic outrage. Alice Weidel's posting on X that Merz threw all his campaign promises overboard on day one, that this is politics against the will of the voters, except there's video of Merz during the campaign explicitly saying none of us are talking about border closures. The AfD's simultaneously dropping controversial terms like remigration from their position papers and adopting new codes of conduct trying to soften their image so other parties might actually work with them, all while maintaining their victims of anti-democratic exclusion. Subscribe now because we're covering every twist in German politics as it develops. Right, so Alice Weidel's election fraud claims are based on promises Merz never actually made. She posted February 24, the day after the snap election, warning of election fraud on the horizon because Merz refused to close the borders and was speaking with the Greens and SPD about reforming the debt brake. That post got 1.7 million views, which shows how effectively misinformation spreads when people want to believe it. But Merz's actual campaign position was securing the German border, not closing it entirely. There's video evidence of him saying none of us are talking about border closures, nobody is, although that was claimed at times during the election campaign. The AfD's now holding 151 seats in the Bundestag after doubling their previous representation, making them the second largest party in parliament. That's substantial political power in theory, except they're completely isolated because every other party maintains what's called the firewall, refusing any cooperation with a party classified as right-wing extremist by Germany's Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution. The BFV designated the AfD as posing a threat to democracy and constitutional order in early May, though they're waiting for a court ruling before moving forward with broader surveillance. The rebranding effort happening simultaneously with the fraud accusations shows internal AfD confusion about strategy. At their weekend meeting in Heilbronn, they introduced a new code of conduct and adopted a position paper where the word remigration doesn't appear once. That's significant because remigration has been central to AfD rhetoric, understood by many as calling for mass deportations including potentially German citizens of non-German ethnic backgrounds. Dropping that language while maintaining their still tough on migration is the AfD trying to appear moderate enough for coalition talks without alienating their hardcore base. But there's massive internal disagreement about whether moderating is even necessary or desirable. Stefan Brandner, the parliamentary director of the AfD group, publicly dismissed the need for change, citing polls showing most AfD supporters want the party to stay as it is. That's the fundamental tension. The leadership trying to make themselves coalition-ready while the base and significant portions of the parliamentary group think ideological purity matters more than governing power. The potential opening with Sahra Wagenknecht's BSW party adds another dimension. BSW sits on the political left but has nationalist leanings that align with some AfD positions, particularly on immigration and skepticism of Western military involvement in Ukraine. Wagenknecht said she's open to talks with the AfD according to Spiegel reporting, and AfD co-leader Tino Chrupalla said he'd be available for talks with her. That's potentially the first crack in the firewall if a left nationalist party is willing to work with a right nationalist one based on shared positions on specific issues. The firewall itself has become increasingly controversial. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance criticized it in Munich, saying democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters, there's no room for firewalls. That's American officials essentially saying Germany's anti-extremist norms that developed after World War II are undemocratic, which is a wild position that conveniently benefits the AfD. Elon Musk's been even more explicit in his support, appearing at an AfD rally and telling Germans they needed to stop feeling guilty for the sins of their parents, days after making gestures that looked remarkably similar to Nazi salutes. Merz's own position on the firewall has been inconsistent, which feeds AfD accusations of hypocrisy. He passionately stated in January that under his leadership there won't be cooperation between the CDU and AfD, that the CDU would sell its soul doing so. Then, after a knife attack by an Afghan migrant, Merz put a migration motion to vote that passed with AfD support. He claimed the union doesn't speak to the AfD or coordinate with them, they just propose what they believe is right, but that distinction is thin enough to see through. The backlash was immediate, with former Chancellor Merkel calling it wrong in a rare intervention. The election fraud accusations are politically useful for the AfD regardless of truth. They position the party as victims of an establishment conspiracy, which reinforces their outsider brand and anti-system messaging. Whether Weidel actually believes Merz committed fraud or whether she's cynically exploiting ambiguous campaign language to generate outrage probably doesn't matter to AfD voters who want to believe the system's rigged against them. So there you have it. The AfD's claiming election fraud based on promises Merz didn't make while simultaneously trying to moderate their image enough for potential coalition talks. They're dropping controversial rhetoric while maintaining extremist positions, getting classified as threats to democracy while demanding to be treated as a normal opposition party. Whether their strategy of playing victim while seeking power works depends on whether other parties cave to pressure or maintain the firewall. Drop your thoughts in the comments about whether the AfD's rebranding is genuine or tactical. Subscribe and hit that bell for every development in German politics. Discuss.